analysis. What we are using is the classical method, right? There are other methods which we've talked about, but we don't need to worry about the other methods, okay?
I'm
We're using
recording,
the
but I'm
classical
not
method.
using your face,
I
okay?
don't
So I
give a
can
shit.
come back
Go-
to it.
Go for it. Okay, so there are 4 steps in the classical method, okay? Step 1 is to name a rhetorical device. It's not pretty, but whatever. Okay, rhetorical devices are going to come from the 5 canons of rhetoric, I gotta find it again. The 5 canons of rhetoric are invention, arrangement, delivery, memory. Now, he specifically said, don't pay attention to these 2. Don't pick
Right.
a rhetorical device from one of those. So we want to pick our rhetorical device from one of these 3, okay? So what you need to do is understand what these 3 are, come up with a rhetorical device. You're going to have to Google, figure out what the rhetorical device is that you want to use. For example, I am looking at invention, and within that, there is logos, ethos, pathos. I'm focusing on logos, and within that, there is syllogism. Within that, there's even more, but this is what I'm looking at, a standard syllogism, okay? So syllogism is my rhetorical device. That's what I am writing my analysis essay about. You may choose to work in arrangement or style. Style has, in the module for style on Canvas, there is the most external links. Like, he has a whole bunch of options for us to go look at. Personally, I didn't find anything that matched our artifact that related to style. So I would encourage anybody to look either at invention or arrangement. Okay? So, step 1 is name a rhetorical device, and there are 5 umbrellas that you can look at, and then you need to find something within those 5, okay? And then you have step 2, which has 3 parts. Again, we're talking about the classical method, just the classical method. In step 2, there are 3 parts. You have part A, which is to define rhetorical device. Give it a definition. Okay? A syllogism is a particular type of logical argument in which you're given a major premise and a minor premise, and that, through deductive reasoning, that results in a logical conclusion. Okay? That's the definition of a syllogism. That's what you're doing in that. In part B, so 2B, this is where you're going to spend the majority of your time on your analysis essay. 2B. In 2B, we're going to discuss the purpose of that device.
The purpose of the
So you are answer the question, what does this device typically accomplish?
And you did invention, so you're just focusing on, or logos.
I did syllogism.
Okay.
Syllogism is my rhetorical device.
Okay.
Typically accomplish. So typically it accomplishes a logical conclusion, right? It typically can be used as a persuasive argument for people to draw a logical conclusion. That's what it typically does. Okay. What he has noted here for us is to quote the experts. Okay. This is a good place to quote the experts, and this is where you're going to be spending the most of your time.
With the outside sources.
With outside sources.
Right. Okay.
Here. 2C is give examples of the artifact functioning. No. Of the device functioning outside your artifact. So you may quote from political speeches, you may quote from other related topics, like other typical things on abortion, or look at if you're leading up to something in your interpretation, you may decide, hey, I want to look at Planned Parenthood. Do they have any examples of syllogism, right? And that'll compare and contrast how two differing opinions might use the same structure, might use the same way of inventing, which is just collecting knowledge. Invention is collecting knowledge. Arrangement is arranging that knowledge. Okay. Anyways, so give examples of the device functioning outside your artifact. Okay. And then, so this is step 2, A, B, C. We're going to go to step 3, which is give example in your artifact. So in this case, we could say, step or main point 1, part 1 and part 3 work together to form the primary premise and the secondary premise of a syllogism, with the conclusion being the telos of the artifact. Okay. So depending on what rhetorical device you use, you're going to quote different parts of the class artifact. But we're still working directly in the class artifact, right? Like that's still our main content, but we're going to be quoting from outside sources as well. But once you get to step 3, you're quoting from in the artifact.
Okay.
Okay. And then step 4 is to describe, basically to show how device is functioning in the artifact. So this really, it should be answering the question, does the device function like we thought it should in 2B? Okay. This is step 4 should answer this question. And 2B meaning this. The purpose, what does this device typically accomplish? Did it accomplish that in the artifact? Okay. From there, as part of rhetorical criticism, we will move on in this class to interpretation, which I just had him clarify for me. This is more about intention. The rhetor's, the writer, the author, the rhetor's intention in using that artifact.
That's the final paper. We're doing that.
This is the
Yeah.
final paper.
Okay.
But what you will need to know all of these steps for the exam.
Right.
The midterm exam, you're not going to need to go into super depth about what interpretation is for or what evaluation is for, but you do need to know that all 4 of these are steps to rhetorical criticism. And evaluation just says, did it do a good job, kind of. We don't need to worry about that. That's more like where you share your opinion. Like, yeah, I think that it made a strong case, and I believe that, I believe in the telos. Like, they have converted me to being pro-life, right? Like, that's essentially what you're doing once you get to evaluation. But you need to know all of these steps. This is essentially a map for the things that you're going to need to know for the midterm, right? There you go.